Good morning, Mobile, and all of our friends along the Gulf Coast. We are so excited to be here at the BC Rain High School with my good friend Curtis.
The BC Rain High School, right?
The
only. Yeah.
The only. Just like you were the only Curtis sitting next to me.
I don't know about that, but yeah, go ahead. Go with it.
Well, I've got a surprise for you today.
What do you have?
We did not have to search very far to find an amazing teacher that was willing to come on our show to tell an amazing story because she is not your ordinary teacher. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time today talking with Dr. Stacey Thomas, who, surprise, happens to be sitting next to you.
I know, right? Yeah. My surprise.
Welcome to our show. Thank you for being here. First off, I know you have a super busy schedule. Ahead of time, we were told that you were not an ordinary teacher, and since I've been around you for just a few short minutes, I understand why. Yes, it has been confirmed, and I want our viewers who tune in faithfully every Friday at 8:30 with us on the Echo Stop Live podcast to understand that when I say not an ordinary, I'm complimenting you because our world is in a place where we don't need the ordinary to make the extraordinary changes that are required. And so thank you for not only being here, but thank you for being the person and the teacher
Absolutely.
That you have faithfully followed and called to be. And I think that's the amazing story here. So just tell us a little bit so our viewers know a little bit about your background and how you became a teacher and what else you might have done along the way, because it seems like there's quite a few things packed in there.
Oh, well, first off, thank you for having me. I am Stacey Thomas. My friends call me Stacy. I'm originally from McIntosh, Alabama. Well, actually, I'm originally from North Carolina. My parents moved to Alabama when I was in high school. I left here, decided to follow my path of wanting to be a lawyer. So I've always wanted to be a teacher and a lawyer. I've been doing that now. I don't want to tell my age. For a good little time. I come from the collegiate level. I taught at Southern University as well as Bishop State Community College. And so I am now here at BC Rain High School. This is my second year here, and it's really been a joy. So yes, I am a instructor. I am a businesswoman, lawyer, and I'm also a farmer. So, yeah.
Okay, we can't let that go.
Wow.
On the Echo Stop Live podcast, you can't say things like "I'm also a farmer" and just let that go. So, you do what kind of farming?
I have a crawfish farm in Washington County, Alabama.
Oh, awesome! Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's amazing. I just had to ask because here's the thing. We believe in finding out what somebody's story is. And it's always amazing the little tidbits of things that you find out about people. But it tells a lot about a person when you have that many different things going on. Obviously, you're vested heavily in seeing things through from beginning to end, right? You can't start these kinds of projects and not finish them. So why do you teach?
I love it. I come from a family of educators. My father was actually a HBCU, historically black college and university president. So I've grown up around education my entire life. My dad always told me, Stacy, take the world for what it is, but leave it better. So in that vein, that was my mindset. I've always loved working with children. They inspire me to do better, and I hope I inspire them sometimes. Sometimes I do, probably sometimes that I don't. So I decided to do math education because I always loved math. So that was a perfect fit for me. So I've taught math both on the collegiate and the high school level for a little over 23 years.
Stacey, you're also a practicing attorney too, right?
I practice in real estate. I do business consulting, real estate development, working with communities. That has been my biggest joy. I work with various developers with different projects. So for me, and we also work with the various nonprofits, Chodo's there too in my original county, Washington County, that we work heavily on. Because again, it's about giving back to the community and trying to improve the quality of life for everyone.
Kevin, I will never tell you again that I don't have time, okay? Never, ever will I tell you that again.
Well, and I don't want anybody to think we're being timed. We've heard a couple of chimes chime in here, but you can't be in a school and not feel like you're part of the school schedule.
That's
and you're
right.
actually taking time out of your school schedule to talk to us. So,
Yeah.
For our viewers that are listening, there's life going on around us, and that's what makes this opportunity so amazing because we're right here in the middle of it. We didn't try to have this conversation in any other setting. We wanted to come to the front lines.
That's right.
And yes, Curtis, I've seen you manage your time schedule before, and I feel like
Leave it
there's a
alone,
lot of
okay?
things. You got a lot of things, but you have a heart to serve.
Yes.
It's evident. Obviously, you're every professional thing that you've attained, you've somehow turned it into the ability to use it for service, and I think that's amazing.
The great thing I love about it is the fact that you are bringing all that to a classroom to share with young people. That's powerful.
I mean, how do you translate everything that you've experienced into something valuable for your students?
Oh, wow. That is a loaded question.
It is. And this is a 7-part series. No,
depending upon the day you ask them, students love to ask the proverbial question, where are we going to use this in real life? So they've learned not to ask me that question because the reality is, whether we like it or not, math is used in everything we do in life. And so typically I utilize within the classroom different activities for the students. In fact, in May, I'll host my STEAM 2.0 conference with my students because they will have to go in, and I treat them like it's a business because so many of them have expressed interest in doing different things. And so I try to bring all of those type of applications into the forefront, into the actual activities. Some of the resources that the school system provides also affords me the opportunity to automatically incorporate some real world applications, but to make sure that the students have the opportunity to do something from concept to completion, I do the STEAM 2.0 conference each year.
Wow.
You know, when I think of all the number of students that you engage on a daily basis, what is your approach in helping to identify the talents of students?
Well, you all are coming hard with some. Let me see. I think some of that is just discernment and innate, if that makes any sense. I talk to my students. I don't start the class off immediately. Here's the quadratic formula.
You just said something.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to stop you. You just said something when you said you talk to your students.
Yeah, so, and typically I may start off with just asking them how their weekend went, or if there's something going on in the current events. I like to allow them to feel like they can be engaged, and this is a safe space to share their opinions and that their opinions are valued. And then after we go through those conversations, then I typically will start with the actual class questions. I also engage students in engaging each other. Traditionally, my classroom is set up a lot different from this because everybody doesn't learn the same. So that language should be, we talk about it as educators, but it really should be valued within the type of instruction that you do. So if you're a student that really does really well singularly, there's a section for you for that. If you're a student that likes to work within groups and be engaged within that and really learn together, there's an area for that. Sometimes students need that additional help. There's an area for that. So when we talk about differentiating instruction and providing something that's different to allow students to be them, that's what I try to get at. So that's me.
That's extraordinary because in and of itself, you're talking about basically being in a classroom and having defining sections for those students that learn a certain way. But they're all learning at the same time through you, but they're learning in their own way.
Well, I think what we're talking about is something that represents what's actually happening in the real world, that we're not lumping people together in one group. We're individually assessing resources as needed for the people the way that it's best effective for them. And I feel like, when you lump people into groups, maybe society sort of carries them along, but then what happens when they're on their own if they're that type of a learner or a thinker?
Exactly.
But, and I didn't mean to cut you off earlier, but when you said that you talk to them, talk is such a simple word when it's said, but it actually involves so many different parts and pieces because there's the message, there's how it's being delivered, and there's a lot of listening.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times we say we're talking, but we don't do as much listening. And I feel like as a teacher, for you to sit here and say that you talk in a class, we think you come into a classroom and the teacher talks and the students listen. We're sort of shifting that a little bit, right?
Absolutely.
The best way for them to learn is for you to understand what their needs are, and you can't figure that out unless you listen.
Exactly.
So we've literally flipped talk upside down in a classroom setting, and I think that's extraordinary. We've highlighted a lot of extraordinary things here.
We have. I think, it goes to what Maya Angelou said, people they don't care how much you know until you show how much you care.
Absolutely.
And you're doing that. So
well, and speaking of listening, we want our viewers to know we want to hear from you. We say see something, say something, but we also say do something. And one of the things you can do is send us an email at echostoplive@gmail.com. That's echostoplive@gmail.com. You can send us your email. And we'll try to get to some questions, or at least one during every episode if we can. But we'll certainly answer every message we get. Nothing will go unchecked or unattended. We want to hear from you. And if you know of something that's happening in the community and you feel like there's value, an anonymous tip, something that you want somebody to know, but maybe you don't want to get involved 100% the way you've done before, we have an opportunity for you. And it's to send us a message, to text, to scan a QR code if you see one of our signs, or to call an 800 number and send us a WE tip. And that's 844-251-0644. 844-251-0644. We can't do this alone. It takes all of us. We're talking with an extraordinary teacher today who understands that this is not a single person's responsibility, but at the same time, she has owned every opportunity to become that responsible person. And I feel like that's really walking into the message. So thank you for joining us, and we're going to continue this conversation. And I feel like we have so much to talk about and so little time to do it before they blow the bells again and we have to leave.
There's a question, Kevin, that I want to jump in here real quick and just ask.
Absolutely.
Can I call you Stacy?
Absolutely. My friends call me Stacy.
Right. Well, Stacy, we are friends now.
That's right.
Look,
We're friends. Can I call you? Never mind.
No, it's perfect. but teaching real world perspectives. I heard you say that before, and how do you do that with your students?
I'm always honest, even brutally honest sometimes, because that's what they need. I think we don't give students enough credit, or young people enough credit to know that they can handle the truth. They can handle more than we want to provide for them. Oftentimes we want to tell students, don't do as I say, don't do as I do,
right.
Or we want to tell them how they should feel. Well, who am I to tell you how you should feel? So when we're engaged, when we're having conversations, whether it's about the math or whether it's about what's going on at the school or just in life in general, they are always respected. And I expect the same in return. If you notice, or when I'm around my students, I never call them by their first name. They typically ask, well, why don't you call us by our first name while they're last? Because I want them to know that I do value you, and that right now, this is your job. So I'm going to treat you as a professional young student in this moment and in this space. And so when I come into class, I never teach a problem one way. I hated that when I was in high school. The teacher will do the problem one way on the board, and then you're assumed that's the only way. I'll do it 2 or 3 different ways. You get to choose the one you go with, because that may resonate better with you. And who am I to say which one should fit you? My job is to give you as much information as I can and allow you to choose. The beauty and the power of choice is something that, as I tell students often, throughout the Bible, the one thing that's consistent, God always gave us a choice, and I do the same thing with them. I don't feel like it's my place to make that choice for them. So
I love it.
And I'm going to ask this of a math teacher. We solve problems in here.
Absolutely.
But what we're really doing is we're teaching the next generation how to solve problems.
How to think. That's right.
And that's amazing. I didn't appreciate it as much when I was in math. I had to take math several times, not because I chose to, but because I was trying to get out of that one class I was in. But it really does give you just a fundamental understanding of problem solving. And if there's one thing that separates people who graduate schools and those who are going to become world changers, and my prayer is all of them become world changers, you have to be willing to solve problems and put the work in to show that you have a solution for the problem. Because we can all point out things we don't like.
Exactly.
But how many of us have the solution?
Exactly.
And that's the problem solving. And what I hear you doing is you've stepped into a role, into an occupation that for years, I'll just go ahead and say, has probably been underappreciated. Not by me. Thank you for what you do, by the way.
Yes.
But a role that is kind of, and I've mentioned this, and I've tried to mention it in every episode now, is, we talk about these pillars in the community, and one of them is education. But education is that link that connects all of the other pillars, and it sounds like you're doing that here. What do you say to children? You've got these students, these young student professionals that come in here that are facing some of the most difficult choices. And I can't say like our lives were easier as younger, but I don't remember half of these choices. So what do you say to a group, a young population of future leaders who are facing some of the most difficult choices right here in this school?
Oh, gosh. Sometimes I don't. Again, it goes back to, as you were just saying, some of the issues that these young people have to deal with. I know in my generation, I'm sure in yours, we didn't have to deal with those type things. And so if I've never walked in that type shoe, how can I really share my experience with it? So I try to listen to them, and sometimes they engage each other because some of them have been through. So I do try to encourage as much as I can. But again, as you shared earlier, this is about finding ways. And I can offer suggestions with certain things, but for the most part, I try to engage them to think through how they can achieve whether it's in the classroom, outside of the classroom, in their own community, in their own homes, because again, this world is a lot different from how it was for us. But the goal when they're here, again, is for me to provide a space where they can flourish, thrive, and engage not just themselves or challenge themselves, but each other.
You just said something again about something that was so powerful when meaning, and that is that sometimes you just don't say anything because you didn't come up in the world that they're currently living in. And because of that, there's a real importance in bringing them to the table and letting them actually be part of solving the problem that you're teaching them how to do in the classroom today with just math, but just in life in general. So what you're saying is that instead of us always looking to solve their problem, give them or facilitate the atmosphere for them to solve the problem.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's in part why we started DOPE. Next week you will hear from my students who are my DOPE students, and DOPE stands for it's an acronym for doing opposite other people's expectations. And it literally came out of a conversation we were having in regards to some violence that occurred within the community, their community over the weekend. And so we were just talking in general about how they're perceived, what's going on, what can we do that's different? And the conversation took on a life of its own, because from there we also talked about, what's priorities and how they use their finances, and how do they contribute to some of the stereotypes, and how can they change these misconceptions. And so one of the students shared with me that they had spent about $40 on a t-shirt. And so being old school, that like I am, I couldn't believe that they had spent that much money on it. I said, well, if you're going to spend that type of money, advocate and spend for yourself. How do you make sure that your money stays within your community? And so we started having that type of conversation. And so a student said something else, and it made me think of the words, well, if you want to be seen differently and you all are doing differently, why not? They think you all are always using DOPE. Why not we use this for something positive? And so that's how we came about with DOPE and moving forward. And I look forward to seeing and hearing them.
And, I'm looking forward to that as well. And I think that's absolutely exciting. Did you know that we've got, I know it's a surprise to him, but we've got a little commercial that they put together. I'd love to see what it is. Let's take a look.
I am not a criminal.
I am not your stereotype.
I am not the brunt of your joke.
I am not your thug.
I am not a bully.
I am not your reciprocal.
I am an artist. I am an author. I am compassionate. I am dope.
I am an ally. I am a friend. I am kind. I am dope. I am a percussionist. I am compassionate. I am kind. I am dope.
I am a scholar. I am an artist. I am kind. I am dope.
I am a cheerleader. I am caring. I am kind. I am dope.
We hope you learn from our message.
All these students are members of the BC Rain class of 2024. They took on this challenge to let you know what it is to be kind, but more importantly, to allow you to know that they're doing opposite other people's expectations. They are dope.
This type of work is so amazing. I'm glad that we were able to see this, and I'm so excited to actually talk to the students. And can I steal your SRP moment for a second?
Steal it, take it.
So Curtis and I talk about
Give it
Sir
back,
Robert Peel
okay.
all the time because, from a law enforcement perspective, having a podcast that we can take out in the community is not normal too. It's a little out of the normal, and so we've got two of the greatest non-normal people doing it. But if you go back to the very first line in the 9 tenets that he set out, the purpose is to prevent crime and disorder. And so I want to focus on the word disorder for a second, because disorder is not crime. Disorder is things that are not orderly. Mm-hmm. And so if the purpose of this podcast and the purpose of hearing from the voices in our community is to tackle guns, drugs, gangs, violence, all of the things that are just being thrown at us. And then we say, okay, run through each of these obstacles and, by the way, be successful on the other end. We have to take a stand to sort of put the disorderly back in order. And that's not necessarily the students. Mm-hmm. That's the things that are being thrown at us. See, to be effective in law enforcement, you're preventing. And all too often we see the news as we're responding, mm-hmm. and we're sometimes even reacting, unfortunately. Right. And so I feel like this opportunity to see something, say something, and do something means we also have an opportunity to meet people like you, mm-hmm. and find out how can we, so this could be a question, how do we take the things that are out of order and put them back into order again? And I know if we had that answer 100%, and we could put it into play, yeah. I think SRP would be having his own moment at the second. But really, that's what we're talking about. And my friend Curtis here says all the time, hey, schools are nothing more than a community within themselves, and they have all the same problems. And so, how do we? What are some of the things? Huh?
Glad you're listening.
Well, you wrote me a note, but no, I do listen, and I'm constantly learning from you and from all of our guests. And this is going to be a segue into really talking about teen court. But mm-hmm. but how do we take this disorder and find ways to put it back into order?
Oh gosh. Well, I tell the students all the time, we have left you a messed up world, oh, yeah. And even in the school system itself, there are systems, as we discuss oftentimes, and that's a complex system. So to try to, I think one of the things that as a society, just like we do in the educational system, all too often, as you were just sharing, we segment pieces as if somehow or another that they're separate and apart, when the reality is each one of these circles, each one of these issues mm-hmm. are working in conjunction with one another. So if there's a problem within one, there's a problem within all. So saying that to say, one of the things that I typically do with my students, or we've done, each week we have what's called fairy tale court. And we take a fairy tale and then we turn it into a court case, a real life court case, whether it's, Jack and Beanstalk, was he actually a thief, or was Cinderella a gold digger? But they're very unique, and it affords them the opportunity to have different perspectives. So why am I going there? Those skills, those skill sets, those same students then wanted to turn into an actual teen court, because so many students are being suspended or parents put in jail just for something as simple as truancy. Truancy is a huge issue, and I'm just using this one as a caveat because this is a discussion that the students did share, saying, well, hey, look, how about establishing teen court and allowing, instead of the judicial system being bogged down with these issues, allow us, because half the time the students know where those missing students are anyway. So how can we provide something that's less punitive and more redemptive? So because the goal is to change the behavior, not to constantly punish it. And I think if we can allow students to be more involved in something as simple as that, I think we may see small changes. And just like the chaos theory says, all it takes is a few little ripples, and next thing you know, it's a tidal wave. Mm-hmm. So that's the goal.
But you said something there. So if you have a few little ripples that turn into a tidal wave, but you start redeeming some of those ripples along the way, don't you kind of put a dam there for a second and you sort of divert that flow, because now you're giving hope
Absolutely.
back to something that maybe society had convinced somebody was hopeless.
Absolutely.
And I feel like that, what better place, what better platform than as a teacher? Like, where else do you get the exposure whether they want to be here or not, that they come to like being here because of how you treat them in this experience, right? And so that's amazing. And I'm sure you've thought about this, but if you haven't, let me throw this out there. You're creating a legacy. This is something that, like, you don't even probably know, but you know the formula, so you can do the math. But like exponentially, every child you affect, how many other people is that child going to affect as they become adults, as they become mothers and fathers and families and business owners and professionals and wherever they go. And so, to be here at the ground level only 2 years in at this particular school and know that there's a legacy being created, I think is honorable. So thank you once again for that.
And what I hear also, Stacy, is that you're asking young people for every thought that enters their mind, to hold it hostage, take it, and challenge it. Challenge that thought to determine whether or not that thought is a righteous thought or a thought that they should get rid of.
Absolutely.
And replace it with the right thought.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. That is ultimately the goal, just to be better versions of ourselves. And they challenge me to do the same thing. And I do try to show them that our world is not just this box.
Right.
It's not just BC Rain. It's not just Mobile. We are responsible for a global society. We are a part of a global community. And so hopefully, as you see with my students, you'll find that they do want to effectuate change for everyone.
Well, I think that's awesome. And, unfortunately, we got to bring this particular episode to a close.
Yes.
I think the takeaway here and the message that you have is lead when given the opportunity to be a leader.
Absolutely.
Change when given the opportunity to make change. And if you inherit something and you're not happy with the way it is, don't just complain about it. Stand up and do something about it.
Absolutely. Take
And
the
I
world
feel
for what it is, but leave it better.
I feel that's awesome. I thank you again for just taking the time out of your schedule. Hopefully you're not behind on grading papers or whatever.
God, no.
But we appreciate this message has a lot greater, and they even know it's the time to end this episode. But we thank you again for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next Friday, where we'll actually have an opportunity to talk to the students. Again, don't just see something or say something, but do something. Call us on our 844-251-0644. Email us at echostoplive@gmail.com. And again, the purpose of this show is not to just get ideas of how to impede violence, but to improve perception. Impeding violence and improving perception is everything that EchoStop stands for. It's why we're doing a series called Voices in the Community, and we heard from an amazing, not ordinary, but extraordinary voice today. So thank you again for tuning in. Curtis, thanks for sitting by my side.
Always.
Allowing me to sit by yours. And Stacey, thank you for joining us. And our prayer is that God continues to bless you and allows you to do what you've been called to do. And thank you for stepping into that and following faithfully. We appreciate what you do. Thank you again. Tune in next Friday. We look forward to seeing you then. Have a great weekend.